All right, so here I will be making a matrix in Python. I will be turning that matrix into a dictionary and writing said dictionary as a file, which will be which has the capability of being retrieved to an HTML code as a JavaScript format. So it's actually not as hard, as complicated as I'm making it sound. So I'll just get started. Uh, the first thing is just making a directory for all this stuff that I'm about to make. Now, directory, I'm just going to call it Python.js. And the only thing you need to do is you need to create a couple of files here. You can just create them. You can change the names. You don't have to pick the ones that I'm picking, but I'm just picking really simple names. So app.py, that's the Python file, and the index.html. That's it. Right now, we're just gonna open these two files. Right. So now open. Obviously, they're empty. Because I just basically just created two blank files, right? So we'll start with the Python file. Everything starts with Python, as I mentioned. So because we want to make an array, start with an array, we'll just import this numerical Python module, which gives us a capability of making them really quick. So we're just gonna call it matrix. And let's make it have, 36 values. And because it's a matrix, it's gonna be, it doesn't necessarily have to be this way, but I'm just gonna make it have 36 entries, so the shape will be 6 by 6. Now, if you want to take a look at what that would look like, that sounded a little redundant. We can always run the code that we just made. So this is what we have: 6 by 6 matrix with entries from 0 to 35. Now we're gonna make a dictionary. And our dictionary, the way that I'm envisioning it is, I guess it will have 3 keys: the column number, the row number, and the value in that of that specific element in the said row and column. So our dictionary, and I think they're great because you can make them in Python. They're really easily translatable. So this is why I'm making it this way. So the first key will be, let's just call it X, as in row, for row. Yeah. Okay. So then we'll also have, as I mentioned, a column. I think there's something wrong here. It has to be this way. And also the value of in that specific row and column. Okay. Now J and I are just indices, so this is something that we need to iterate. Now, fortunately, that can be very easily just written here as a one-liner with Python. So J actually is gonna be index for the columns, for the rows. So rows. And then I is gonna be index in the range of columns. Now, of course, if we want to iterate it as a one-liner, we just have to enclose everything, this whole statement in brackets. So like this. This is basically what I did that. So now we need to also declare rows and columns. We know that it's 6 and 6, but I always find it better if we just declare everything a little bit more explicitly. I feel that it's more elegant that way. And that way we can also change it later on if you want to get a bigger matrix. define a bigger matrix or make it a function or something like that, right? So, I mean, we can just, anyways, I'm not gonna go into that detail, but I just want to show something simple. So, a dictionary. So we just turn. Now, if you want to see what that would look like, we can always also print the dictionary. And then run the code again. And apparently I did something wrong. Oh yeah, I forgot the colon here. Am I doing it right? No, am I doing it? Yeah, no, here, like this. Okay, so yeah, so you can see that now we have our matrix and we have our dictionary. Our matrix turned into dictionary, which is basically that last step that I just did. Okay, so now we can just like silence these. And so now that we have our dictionary, what we want to do, as I mentioned, is we want to want to write our dictionary as a file. And this file will be a JavaScript file, which will have a declaration of a variable, of a JSON object, actually. So the way that we do this is we are going to need to import some more modules here. So we're going to import the JSON module. No, like this. We're going to import this module which can write what it reads from any printing statement in the script after it's been declared, after the function has been run, I mean. So yeah, let's start with that. Let's actually, what we're gonna do is we need to declare this reader and writer, sys.sdout. Here we're just gonna write the name of the file that we want to create. I'll just call it main.js. Actually, I'll call it declare because it's a declaration, right? We will basically be declaring variable, maybe JSON string. I'll explain why string. And then here we'll have basically be your dictionary with your keys and so on and so forth, right? So we'll call it that. And it also needs to have a W here, which is the command, which tells it that we want to write the printed statement that comes after the line. So there's still some stuff that we need to do here. We need to turn the dictionary, our dictionary, into a JSON object. So this is how we do it. That's why we needed the module. And now that that's done, so I just call it this. I don't want the redundancy to ruin my code. Now, as I mentioned, we want the system to create a file called declare.js, which has the format in line 16, or follows that scheme, basically declaring a variable, followed by equal sign, and then the whole dictionary, JSONified dictionary. So we'll just call it, I just keep the convention, JSON string, and it will look like something, I'm doing something wrong here. Whoops. Sorry about that. Have the following convention. And so now JSON object. So the reason why I'm calling it JSON string is because it's not quite serialized. I mean, it was here with JSON.dumps, but because we're declaring it as a we have quotes here, right, after the declaration. This variable is actually not a JSON object, but a string in reality. It's a little confusing, but that's basically why we're calling it JSON string. We need to reserialize it once we load it to HTML. That's why. So it will basically print that. And this is what we need to, for in the Python file, to have the Python file create the JavaScript file. All right, so once I run it, when I run it right now, it should be creating it. And there's something wrong here, apparently. What could be wrong? I forgot to write open. All right. Okay, so as you can see, I just run the application again, and it created this file, declare.js. And so this is basically what we want Python to write. A variable declaration, followed by the variable name and the definition of the variable. That's it. So now we're going to load this declare.js into index, into a HTML file. And I'm just going to create a simple starting sample for HTML. Visual Studio Code makes things very easy. So there's tons of different apps that you can add the applets or plugins that you can add to Visual Studio Code to make to streamline your coding experience. Right, so yeah, this one, I forgot what it was called, IntelliSense, I think, I'm not so sure. Anyways, I digress. So what we need here for this to work is just a very boilerplate template, just brackets declaring the HTML file and closing it, also declaring the head, so the header, right, so everything that it's in the HTML, basically outside of the HTML, and then body, it's everything that will open once we execute the server. So in body, what I'm going to write, I'm just going to make up a heading in the body. It's going to be called from Python to JavaScript. Let's call it JavaScript-HTML, right? I guess the next liner is going to be here is the data. And now I'm going to open this HTML file on Firefox. And so this is basically just to show us like what we are displaying, what is being created by the HTML file. So I open it, and this is what it says. From Python to JavaScript-HTML. Here's data. That's basically the same thing that I've written here. So now let's just load this declare.js. Let's load this declaration in the HTML file. So for that, we basically need to write script here, and we need to define the type of script that we're going to write. It's going to be a text, JavaScript, and we need to write the source, which will obviously be the name of the file, the declare.js file alone, because that file is inside the folder or the directory where index.html is also being housed. So we just write the name, then that's basically it. Now, of course, we want to write also a script which will do some things to that file, just to show you that it's working. So we declare another script bracket here, an empty script bracket, as you can see. Now in here, we need to do a little bit of our treatment on this bar JSON string variable, on this JSON string variable. Right, so we need to turn it into JSON again, because it's actually a string file, a string variable, sorry. So the way we do that is we're just going to be calling it, let's just call it JSON for real, right? That's actually too long. Let me just for real. Yeah. Okay, and it's gonna be. We're gonna turn it into JSON file. We're gonna serialize it again. So it's JSON parse, I believe, and then the name of our variable that is string form is JSON str. Basically it. Now I want to see if it works, so basically a quick test is just to have it write, have it JSON for real. I'm gonna have it write the length of that JSON variable now. The length should be have 36 entries, right? As you can see, it goes from 0 to 35, so it's 36 in total. And each of those entries have their set of keys and values. So just as a quick test, we go and we write document.write in the HTML file after we've declared the declared.js, and also just open up some brackets for a secondary script. So after that's done, it should give us the length, right? Length is, it should be 36. We go back to the file and we reload it, and we don't get anything. Huh. Okay, there's something that I must have missed here. Yeah, so I missed a comma. All right, now we load it again, and you can see we got 36. So it's working, so we're on the right track here. Now what I wanted to do is I wanted to do something a little bit more interesting. I wanted to actually write all the keys of the dictionary and all the elements of the dictionary with their corresponding keys. So that can be done with a for loop very easily. For I, I hope I remember. This is tricky. Equals I goes from 0 to the length of the JSON variable, which is 36, I believe. And this. Okay, so now what we're going to write here is basically every entry of, actually make it easier, break. Oops. So we're going to write all the elements with their corresponding keys. So basically row number and column number, as well as value. Row, column. Right, now as was the convention for our keys, rows were X, columns were Y, and then the value was called value. So that's the same that we need to write here. X for row. Wait, was it? Sorry. Yeah. Okay, X for row, Y for column, and value for value. And let's just add another bracket here, another break, sorry. Right, so now if we run the code, it should just give us basically what I already told you I was doing. So it gives me a lot of undefineds. How cool. Okay, yeah, so we forgot that, we need to, because we're running a for loop, we need to index them, right? So there's no index here. So now it should do the trick. Now it should be indexing or iterating over every entry from the dictionary. So let's see how it looks like now. Interesting, yeah. So we're on the right track. So we're just I just got a little jumbled here. And yeah, that's why I'm jumbled. Okay, so this should make it look a little nicer now. Just thinking still like I was in Python, but I'm not. It's HTML. All right, a little better, a little better. There's something that I'm not liking here. And I'm just going to write double break here. And now the format should look a little nicer now. So if I load it, as you can see now, it gives me every element or every value with their corresponding row and column. Okay, so, and this is of course an HTML. So we started with a Python file, and this can be changed, right? So we can always just change the length, and we can rerun it. This can be just like that. That's why it's good to write declare the rows and columns, you know, because then we can regenerate a new matrix, different length, and now it's telling me that it's not serializable. That's because it doesn't understand integers. Okay, so we remake it. Now it's a 10 by 10. Now it's declared. Now it has 100 entries. Now we can just reload it. We just refresh, and now the length is 100. We get 100 elements. So that was it. That's basically this is the end of the video. I didn't want to make it too long, so I hope that it was helpful. And that's basically it. Goodbye.